Some people are afraid of what lurks in the dark. I learned to be afraid of what hides in plain sight, under the strong Florida sun. I'll tell you something that happened to me when I lived in the United States. Yes, I traveled quite a bit around the world. I was a nanny for about 3 years for a family that traveled a lot, so I got to know airports more than shopping malls. We lived in Celebration, a neighborhood near Orlando that looks like it came out of a margarine commercial. Everything perfect, lawns cut, houses without fences. A bit strange. Our block was a stone's throw from Silvio Santos' house, and no, that didn't impress me. I've run into his whole family there, but to tell the truth, I found those famous people a bore. They didn't give me any chills. The real chills came from somewhere else. I had a sacred routine. In the late afternoon, when the Florida sky turned all orange and purple, I would put my little darling, the baby I cared for, in the stroller for a walk. It was the quickest way to get her to fall asleep. That night, I was walking through the quiet, perfect streets of Celebration. After a while, I looked at the stroller and saw that the little one had already fallen asleep. Mission accomplished. I was passing under a huge tree, an oak, I think. The leaves were such a dark green that they looked almost black, and it was different from the others. More imposing, older. I don't know why I stopped. It was just a moment, a pang in the back of my neck. I stood there, looking up at the top of that tree. I felt that it was the only real living being on that plastic street. I shook my head, thought it was tiredness, and decided to keep going back home. As soon as I took the first step away from it, the world turned upside down. An icy wind cut through the Florida heat, a wind that came from nowhere and whistled softly in my ear. It smelled of wet earth and old, stored things. The temperature dropped suddenly, giving me goosebumps all over. I looked at the sky, which now looked like a strange, dark storm blue. I decided to turn around and quicken my pace home, and that's when my heart froze. The street behind me was no longer the same. The perfect houses were still there, but the windows looked like empty, dark eyes. The familiar sidewalk seemed to stretch, to twist, and the tree that should have been behind me was now in front of me again, blocking the way. I stopped, swallowing hard, wondering how that was possible. I was sure I had passed it. I felt panic rise in my throat. I looked to the sides, searching for another route, but wherever I turned, the feeling was the same. That damned tree was the center of everything. I looked up at its branches again, and this time I saw it. It wasn't just leaves and wood. There was something up there, a dark shape, darker than the night, that moved slowly, as if breathing. It had no eyes, no face, but I knew, with every fiber of my being, that it was watching me. Then I heard a whisper that seemed to come from the very rustling of the leaves, a dry, dragging sound, and it whispered the name of the baby sleeping in the stroller. At that moment, I didn't think. I didn't scream. The protective instinct screamed louder than fear. I gripped the stroller with a strength I didn't know I possessed. I turned my back to the tree and ran. I ran aimlessly, without looking back, just away from that whisper, away from that cold. I ran until my legs burned and I was out of breath, until, suddenly, the warmth of the night returned. The sound of crickets came back, and I found myself 2 streets from home on a familiar sidewalk, as if I had crossed an invisible border. I never told my bosses this. Who would believe me? But a few weeks later I quit, went back to Brazil. I never looked at a leafy tree the same way again, and learned that the perfect neighborhood in commercials is just a shell. What lives underneath? Well, it doesn't like to be disturbed. You know what the worst fear is? It's not the fear of the dark or the bogeyman under the bed. It is the fear that comes after you turn on the light and see that the monster is still there. Worse is when you discover that the monster greeted you every single day. I lived on a quiet street, one of those with houses with low walls and a garden in front. My neighbor to the right, the one at number 34, was Mr. Carlos, a retired, widowed gentleman who spent his days tending to his rose bushes, always wearing a button-down shirt, linen trousers, and a friendly smile. We got along well. He would see me arriving from work and wave. Sometimes he would offer me oranges from the tree he had in his yard. "Take them, Ricardo," he said. "They're a gem, a kind, harmless old man." The night of hell began with my car, an old Celta that decided to break down about 6 blocks from home. It was already past that time when the street is just for you and the stray dogs, you know. My cell phone battery was dead. I took a deep breath, locked the car, and thought, okay, it's just a walk. The street was deserted, the street lights flickering in some sections. In one of those sections, under a yellowish and flickering light, I saw the figure standing in the middle of the sidewalk. A clown. It wasn't a cheerful circus clown. His clothes were dirty and faded. His hair a thin, greasy tuft of red, and his face white with cheap makeup. A red smile painted from ear to ear. A smile that didn't reach his eyes. His eyes were just 2 dark, empty holes. He was completely still, just staring at me. My first thought was a bad joke. Some idiot kid. Prometa turned a Y crossed the street. I wasn't going to give him any encouragement. The clown crossed the street too. Silently, he moved and stopped on the other side, still staring at me with that painted smile. I froze. There was no sound of footsteps, just a soft shuffling, as if his enormous shoes were made of felt. I quickened my pace. Don't look back, Ricardo. Just keep walking. But I could hear it. Shuff, shuff, shuff. The shuffling was faster, keeping up with my pace. My heart started pounding in my throat. I glanced over. He was closer and had something in his hand. In the dark, it took me a while to see what it was. It wasn't a knife. It was a hammer. An old hammer with a wooden handle and a rusty head. Shit. Really bad. I didn't think anymore. I took off, ran with all the strength I had, my backpack hitting my back, the sound of my own panting breath in my head, and the sound of the dragging behind me got faster, frantic. He didn't seem to tire. Choof, choof, choof. Closer and closer. When I turned onto my street, it was like seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. My house. Salvation. I fumbled to get the key from my pocket, my hands trembling so much I could barely hold the metal. The noise was right behind me. I swear to God, I smelled mold and cheap makeup. I put the key in the lock, turned it. The door opened. I rushed in, slammed it shut, turned the lock, and fell to the living room floor, breathless, crying in panic. After what felt like an eternity, I got up and peeked out the window. He was there, standing across the street, under the lamppost, right in front of Mr. Carlos's house, looking at my window. He slowly raised his hand with the hammer and waved goodbye to me. Then he turned and disappeared into the darkness with that same silent dragging sound. I called the police. Of course, I told them everything, my voice trembling. They sent a patrol car. They searched the neighborhood. They didn't find anything. I think they thought I was crazy. The following weeks were a blur. I couldn't sleep properly. Any noise in the street made me jump. I installed more locks on the door. I stopped going out at night. I was devastated, living in fear inside my own house. Sometimes I saw Mr. Carlos in his garden. He waved with the same smile as always, and that gave me a glimmer of normalcy, a safe haven until Saturday morning. I woke up to sirens, 2 patrol cars, and an ambulance parked in front of number 34. Mr. Carlos's house, the whole neighborhood on the street. Curious, I went out too, my heart in my throat. I thought he had fallen ill, poor thing. I stood there watching. I saw the police officers leaving his house with boxers and bags of evidence. And that's when I saw it. One of the police officers was carrying a transparent bag. Inside him was a tuft of greasy red hair. Another carried a dirty, faded clown costume. My world stopped. My blood turned to ice in my veins. They brought him outside. Sue Carlos, handcuffed. He wasn't smiling. His face was a mask of pure, empty hatred. When he passed by me, his eyes met mine. And for a second, justa second, I didn't see the old man who gave me oranges. I saw the same empty, dark eyes that stared at me from under that lamppost. They found things in his basement, things that didn't even make the newspaper. Since that day, I've never felt safe on my own street again. The monster wasn't a stranger who emerged from the darkness. He was the man who knew what time I arrived, who saw me leave, who smiled and wished me good night. And every time a new neighbor moves in and smiles at me, The only thing I can see is a painting of a clown and a rusty hammer. There are stories in the family that we tell quietly, with a different kind of respect. This is one of them, about my sister Adeline. At that time, she must have been about 10 years old. She was the oldest, the one who took care of things. The other one, Gil, was a little younger, always following her closely. It was a hot afternoon, one of those where the sun cracks the ground and the river calls. The two of them, without thinking twice, went to cool off. The water was nice, and in their game of splashing each other, they didn't even see that the gentle current was carrying them both towards the middle, far from the bank, far from where their feet could reach the sandy bottom. It was Gil who panicked first. The water, which had been fun before, turned into a monster swallowing her. She began to struggle to drink water, her eyes wide with panic. Adeline, in her older sister instinct, grabbed her, trying to keep the little one's head above water. It was at that exact moment that the game ended completely. All hell broke loose. Adeline felt a force coming from the depths, something cold and heavy that grabbed both of their legs and began to pull them down. It wasn't the current, it was something else. It was firm, determined, a dead weight, wanting to drag them both into the darkness of the river. While Gil was already almost fainting, giving up, Adeline felt her air running out, her strength fading. The despair was so great that all she wanted to do was give up, sink completely. It was then, amidst the noise of the water and the panic in her mind, that she heard a voice sound clear inside her head. It was a soft, calm voice that seemed to come from nowhere and, at the same time, from everywhere. The voice told her to scream. It said that if she screamed loudly, with the last of her strength, someone would hear. Almost giving up, Adeline gathered what was left of the air in her lungs and let out a scream that tore her throat. A scream of pure terror and hope. 1, 2, 3 screams. And wasn't the voice right? My brother, who was closer to home, heard the scream cutting through the afternoon silence. He ran like a madman towards the river. He arrived in time to see the two of them sinking and threw himself into the water without even thinking. He managed to grab them both and, with a strength he didn't even know he had, dragged them back to the shore. Today, thank God, they're both here. Married with their children, life went on. Adeline became a mother of 2, Gil of 4. But even today, when we sit down to talk, and this story comes up, her eyes widen. She talks about the strength that drew her, the voice that saved her. I get goosebumps again. So, whoever reads this, read it seriously. It's my family's memory. A moment of despair that, by a miracle, didn't turn into a tragedy. This is not a lie. It really happened. Mr. Adelmo was a man of habit, retired, widowed, and with a patience shorter than a funk dancer's outfit. Have you ever felt a sudden urge to do something completely out of character? For Mr. Adelmo, it was a daily nightmare. He had a strange gift. He picked up on the last wishes of the deceased. Think of it as a dead person's Wi-Fi. It was manageable until the former tenant of apartment 501, a fitness fanatic, passed away. Suddenly, Mr. Adelmo's morning coffee was judged for using refined sugar. His bread and butter were shamed for containing gluten and lactose. The ghost was like a personal trainer from beyond the grave, whispering things like, fasted cardio. Mr. Adelmo grilled. That. Egg white. The final straw was when he tried to order a pizza. The ghost had a full-on meltdown, making the lights flicker and demanding he make a kale salad. Fed up, Mr. Adelmo confronted the spirit and found himself forced into a yoga pose. Now, his life is a strange compromise. 10 minutes of jumping jacks every morning just to keep his ghostly roommate happy. Now let me have my coffee in peace. His soul is like a whey protein shaker. He hates every second of it, but reluctantly admits that his back pain has improved. Apparently, not even in the afterlife do we have peace from the Healthy Living Patrol. The archivist of Shivers notes the name in his records. Rose Clyde. The night is already late, the time when the oldest fears feel free to come out, living next to a cemetery. For many, an invitation to terror. For others, like you, just a detail in the landscape. But normality, Rosakel, is a thin veil. And sometimes what lives on the other side of the wall decides to pay a visit. Her story is intriguing. The boy in the refrigerator, The folder is open on the table, the pen in hand. Domestic fear is one of the most potent. He has nowhere to run. The tape begins to roll. I am ready to record his case. Account of Ross Clive, the boy in the refrigerator. First-person narration, as if told by Rosa Clyde. My name is Ross Clyde, and I have lived next to the city cemetery for over 15 years. At first, I confess, it gave me a chill, or the wind howling among the tombstones at the peak of dawn, seeing the fog covering the graves with the first light of morning. But you get used to everything. The cemetery became just a silent neighbor. My fear, I thought, had retired. Little did I know that it had only moved inside the house. It all started with the refrigerator, a heavy brass dimp that cools beautifully. One day I woke up in the middle of the night thirsty and found her door ajar, the light leaking into the dark kitchen. I closed it, grumbling that the rubber seal must be worn out. The next night, the same thing, and the night after that too. Then, it was the magnets. Those pizza door hangers with shopping lists. I would leave them neatly arranged on one side. In the morning, I would find them all piled up in the middle of the door, as if little hands had been playing with them. It must be the magnetism going crazy. I lied to myself. The first real scare came with a sound. It was a rainy late afternoon. The whole house quiet. I was in the living room when I heard a low noise coming from the kitchen. Talk. Tap. Tap. It sounded like fingernails tapping on plastic. I went there, my heart already a little strange. The sound was coming from inside the refrigerator. I stopped, held my breath. Tap, tap, tap. I stopped breathing. What the hell is that? I thought. Aloud, the sound stopped immediately. From 10 on things got ugly. The door not only opened by itself, it was flung open forcefully in the middle of the night, banging against the wall. I would wake up with the bang, my whole body shivering. I would run to the kitchen and see nothing, just the open refrigerator, like a hungry cold mouth in the dark. The terror reached its peak on a moonless night, when the silence was so heavy it hurt my ears. I woke up to a strange buzzing sound. It wasn't the motor, it was different. I tiptoed to the kitchen door and peeked. The refrigerator door was opening, very slowly. The light from inside began to paint the floor, and that's when I saw it. For a fraction of a second, inside the refrigerator, illuminated by that milky, sickly light, was a boy small, pale as milk, with dark hair plastered to his forehead and huge, deep-set eyes that seemed to swallow all the light. He was wearing old clothes, striped pajamas. He saw me. I know he saw me. And then the door slammed shut with such violence that the jars on the top shelf shook. I screamed. I screamed until my throat tore. I spent the night locked in my room crying out of pure panic. The next day, I called a priest. I sprinkled holy water. I prayed. Nothing helped. The noise, the door, the feeling of being watched from the kitchen. It all continued. I didn't sleep. I didn't eat. I was turning into a ghost in my own house. It was after a week of uninterrupted terror that I understood. There was no way to fight anymore. I was exhausted. Whatever it wasn't going away. That night, I didn't lock the bedroom door. I went to the kitchen, stopped in front of the refrigerator, and in the firmest voice I could muster, I said, "Look, I don't know who you are or what you want, but this is my house. I'm not leaving. So stay in your place, and I'll stay in mine, okay?" Silence was the only response. Today we've adapted. I've adapted. Sometimes I still find the refrigerator door open in the morning. I just go there and close it quietly. The magnets still move around. The other day they formed a sad face. I just put them back. The tap, tap, tap sometimes comes back very softly. It's as if it's his way of saying, "Hi, I'm not afraid anymore." Not that fear that paralyzes you. What I have is a resigned acceptance, a peace agreement with the inexplicable. I know I'm not alone. I share my house with the refrigerator boy. He stays in his coldness, and I try to live in my warmth. It's a sinister balance, but it's the only one I have. The cemetery outside never scared me, but the silent inhabitant of my kitchen, that one will stay with me until the end. I moved into that apartment at the beginning of the year, when the city was still reeling from the holiday hangover. It was a small place on the 3rd floor of a building without an elevator, but it was what I could afford. My only next-door neighbor was a musician or something like that. I never heard it, but I did hear it. It wasn't loud music, rock, nothing like that. It was a cello. At first, it was even beautiful. He always played at the same time when night began to fall, and the melody was always sad, melancholic. It accompanied the end of the day. I got used to it. It became part of the house's routine. I would arrive home from work, take a shower, and the music would start like clockwork. After a few months, the music stopped for one night, 2, a whole week. The silence that remained was strange, heavier than the sound had ever been. I thought he had moved. I missed him, to be honest. That's when the other sounds began. First, there was a soft, muffled cry against the wall. A deep, manly cry that came in waves. It always happened in the pitch black of dawn. I would wake up, my heart pounding, and listen to that lonely lament until daybreak. It was uncomfortable, but human. I felt pity. Then the crying stopped too. And what came next wasn't human. It was a scratching sound, like a dog scratching at the door to get out. Except the sound came from a bedroom wall. It was insistent, rhythmic. Scratch, scratch, scratch. I would bang on the wall. Hey, neighbor, stop making that racket. The sound would stop for a moment and then return to the same place, with the same force. I started sleeping on the living room sofa. The last straw was one night. I was in the kitchen drinking a glass of water before settling on the sofa for another night of bad sleep. The silence was total. That is, when I heard it with a clarity that made every hair on my body stand on end. The cello melody was coming from his apartment, but it wasn't like before. It was out of tune, dragging. Each note sounded like a moan, as if the instrument were in pain. It was a sick version of the music I used to listen to, and beneath the melody, almost inaudible, the scratching sound continued. Oh, no. What a shitty idea, I thought to myself, but I needed to do something. Enough. I put on my slippers and went to the hallway. His door, number 302, was there, quietly. A sliver of light passed underneath it. The music continued to be torturous. I knocked on the door. Neighbor, is everything all right in there? Could you turn the volume down a little? The music stopped instantly. The silence returned dense. I waited the time it takes for a cigarette. Nothing. No answer. I was already turning to go back to my apartment, cursing under my breath, when I heard a noise, a click. The lock on his door was turning slowly. The door opened. A tiny crack. Yes. A female voice said from inside. A lady? I froze. Excuse me. I thought it was my neighbor, the musician. The lady opened the door wider. It was an old woman with a bun, wearing a dressing gown. The apartment behind her was dark, silent, no sign of a cello. She looked at me with genuine confusion. Musician, my son. There's no musician here. How can there not be? I insisted. The young man who plays the cello, who lives here. Her face hardened. She sighed, a tired sigh from someone who'd had that conversation before. My son, she said in a low, sad voice. I've lived here with my husband for 40 years. The only neighbor we ever had across the street, the guy from 3 and 2, was my nephew. She paused, looking at the closed door of his apartment. He's been gone for almost a year. He hanged himself in his room. He was such a good boy, but he had a sadness. He loved playing his cello. They found the poor guy hanging with an instrument in his lap. The police said his fingernails were all broken. It seems he regretted it at the last second and tried to free himself, scratching the wall itself. When I was a child, my grandmother's house was the best place in the world. An old mansion, full of rooms, with a damp basement, and a backyard that looked like a forest. Our favorite game was hide and seek. Me, my older brother, Leo, and our neighbor, Anita. The rule was clear. You could hide anywhere, except in the little back room. It was a small room at the end of the upstairs hallway that my grandmother always kept locked. She said it was where I used to keep my grandfather's old things, since he had already died and didn't like us touching them. One rainy afternoon, when the whole house was dark and smelled of mildew, we decided to break the rule. Leo, who was the bravest, managed to open the door with a wire. Inside, there was nothing special, just some old furniture covered with white sheets, cardboard boxers, and a strong smell of mothballs. "I'm going to count," Aninha shouted, already turning to the wall of the hallway. 1, 2, 3. Leo and I looked at each other. The idea was the same, to hide in the best place, the forbidden place. I hid under a table covered with a sheet. Leo went into an old dark wood wardrobe that creaked when he closed the door. I could hear Aninha counting outside. 98, 99, yes. Here I go. I heard her footsteps down the hallway, going in and out of the other rooms. Time passed. The time of a normal search passed. After an eternity, Primera EIRD. Anina, I called out, my voice already half. Leo, where are you? You can come out now. The game is over. I came out of my hiding place. He didn't show up, I asked. No, she said, her eyes already full of tears. I searched the whole house. We both went to the wardrobe. The door was closed. We knocked. Leo opened it. Awkwardly. Silence. We tried to open it, but the door seemed stuck. We called my grandmother. She came, worried, and with great effort, the three of us managed to force the door open. The wardrobe was empty. It didn't have a false bottom. There was no other way out. It was just a wooden box, and Leo wasn't there. We never saw my brother again. The police investigated, but it was as if he had evaporated inside that wardrobe. My family fell apart. Sadness swallowed my grandmother's house. Years later, when I was already an adult and my grandmother was at the end of her life, I helped her empty the house to sell it. We arrived at the small back room. I stopped in front of the wardrobe. It was still there, silent, dusty. "Grandma," I began, my voice faltering. "What was in that room? Why wouldn't you let us in?" She looked at me, her old, tired eyes seeming to see right through me. "It wasn't for your grandfather, my son," she whispered. "It was for his brother, my brother-in-law. He disappeared into this house when he was a boy. My mother-in-law used to say that the last time they saw him, he was playing hide-and-seek and hid in there." She paused and touched the dark wood of the furniture. "Sometimes this toy gets hungry and doesn't like to play alone. The air in here smells of mold and despair. I look at the bars of the cell, but I know that the real prison is in my head, a relentless recording of everything I did. I know the world hated me. I know it wished for my death for years, and to be honest, I wished for it too. I was the villain. I was the bandit who did evil for the sake of doing it. For power, for a stupid sense of control that was never real. I did things that not even the devil would do, I think. I stole. I cheated. I shot without thinking twice. I took lives that didn't belong to me. And now, looking at this piece of paper in my hand, the only thing that truly hurts me is knowing that I won't see you anymore. My love, that word of yours sounds strange in my mouth, doesn't it? A guy like me, who always smelled of gunpowder and blood, shouldn't know what love is. But you taught me. You, with your stormy eyes and sunny smile, managed to find something in me that I didn't even know existed. You saw the man I could have been, not the monster I was. Our time was stolen, I know. Our nights, our hasty escapes, the whispers that everything would be all right were lies. But love, oh, love was the only real thing. When they caught me last week in the shootout, I felt the impact of the bullet in my chest. It didn't hurt as much as seeing the panic on your face when you found out. In Tatsukoan lying on the cold concrete floor, bleeding, I could only think. I condemned her. I dragged you into my own personal hell. I asked you to wait for a future that would never come. I promised that after one last job, we would run away. That we would leave this life behind and buy that house near the beach. The one you dreamed of so much. These were empty promises from a man who knew he was beyond saving. Forgive me for loving you selfishly. for using you as an anchor in a sea I myself created. Forgive me for leaving you alone in this rotten world, knowing that the only thing you will inherit from me is the shame and longing of a criminal. The doctor said I have less than 24 hours. The infection spread quickly. I'm not afraid to die. Fear has been my cellmate for years. My fear is leaving you. My fear is the nothingness you will feel when this is over. I hear the footsteps in the hallway. No, it's the guards, but they don't scare me. What terrifies me is the silence that will come after. My final prayer is not for God, because he doesn't listen to me. It's for you, that you forget me, that you erase the stain I left on your life and find a good man, one who can give you the life you deserve. I love you more than words can say. I will love you even after my heart stops beating. They are coming. I need to finish. If the world is going to, so be it. But know that the only light I saw in my 35 years was you, and my last breath will be your name. Goodbye, my Quinn. I will pay for my hell. Go on with your life. I am a necropsy assistant. I have been working in this for over 15 years. I've seen a lot. Some things I explain on the spot. Others I've learned to let go of. This story happened about 6 years ago in the middle of nowhere. It was on one of those dirt roads you take from a BR highway, near Montes Claros y Minas Gerais. It was past 2 in the morning. The call was for a suicide by gunshot. When I arrived, the local police were already there. The patrol cars were parked, headlights casting a weak light on the old truck yard. It was raining, a thin, constant mist. The scene was calm. We had about 6 police officers under a tin roof in the corner of the yard, near the bag covering the body. I parked the van, grabbed my things, and joined them. We were all crammed together, trying to stay wet. The sound of the rain on the tin roof forced us to speak quietly. We were having a kind of languid conversation when everyone heard footsteps. The sound of heavy boots stomping on the gravel came from behind the trucks about 30 meters away. I looked up immediately and thought, finally the hearse has arrived, but I didn't see any light, just darkness. Is there anyone else here? I asked. The policeman next to me shook his head. Another leaned over to look around. It must have been an animal that came running out of the woods. It made a noise on the gravel. He tried to justify himself, quickly returning under the corrugated iron roof. It made sense. I nodded and tried to get back to the subject. A few minutes passed. The rain was beating heavily on the roof, and I heard it again. But this time it was closer. They were distinct, heavy crackling sounds. Getting closer, I turned the flashlight, sweeping across the trucks. Nothing. The light dissolved into the fog. The policeman noticed that I had stopped talking. Are you all right, doctor? You seem a bit nervous today. I laughed awkwardly. I said I needed coffee, but inside I was completely disturbed. I'm not a beginner in this kind of work. A few more minutes. We heard the engine of a truck far away on the highway. It must have been the hearse. That's when the footsteps returned for the last time, and this time, everyone heard them. They were right above us. We all turned on our flashlights, looking around, but no one saw anything. The police officers remained quiet. The silence returned, enormous, heavy. What was that? One of them whispered. We stood there for almost a minute, staring into the darkness. The stranger never appeared. The funeral home staff arrived. We carried the body. We signed the paperwork and each went our own way. On the way home, I could only repeat the sound in my head. How did we all hear footsteps coming from various directions without ever having seen anything? It wasn't the sound of an animal. It wasn't the sound of tires. It was boots. I went back to that area a few times, but I never heard it again. It could have been the ghost of the guy we went to get. I don't know. I try not to think about it too much, but I know that I and 6 other men heard exactly the same thing. Shortly after I was born in 1968, my parents decided to move to the suburbs of New York. They realized that this would be a better place to raise their children. So, they bought a house in Soup. The 2-story house had 3 rooms. A living room, a dining room, and a separate kitchen that included a fireplace. In addition, there was a partially finished basement with a guest room, a billiard room, and a bar. The unfinished part included a boiler room, a heater, and a laundry room, as well as a bathroom. We lived in this house until '86. when my parents realized that living in the city might be better. Both my parents, particularly my mother, were deeply unhappy there. I remember my parents arguing and my mother crying, as we always felt strange there. For as long as I can remember, I was terrified of the basement because the area near the bar had a particularly dark and menacing feel. I was also terrified of the main floor of the house at night and rarely left my room after being put to bed. I'm not convinced this is anything paranormal, but I'll tell some of my stories and those of my family members. Most of my family members' stories were revealed years after we moved out of the house. This happened at Christmas dinner, when the wine made my mother, father, and sister willing to share their own experiences. The earliest memory I have in my room is of waking up to the sound of laughter, like that of a witch. The laughter would stop right after I woke up. I clearly remember hearing it and being petrified in place. I was so scared that I didn't get out of bed. I remained completely still until I fell asleep again. Of course, this could have been a hypnagogic or hypnoponic hallucination, but it felt very real. My mother avoided going to the basement alone to do laundry. When she was down there, she felt something sinister and menacing watching her, eventually coming up behind her, as if it were breathing down her neck. I remember several times hearing her run up the stairs and slam the basement door. She always claimed that something was chasing her upstairs, a common feeling people have in haunted places. My father claimed that when he was alone at home, he once heard the billiard balls, as if someone was starting a game. He didn't go down to investigate alone, but when my mother arrived home, he made up an excuse for them to go down together, and the table and balls were intact. There was a ramp that connected the bathroom to the laundry room. This saved you the trouble of carrying dirty laundry downstairs. You would grab your dirty clothes, throw them down the ramp, and they would roll down and fall onto the laundry room floor. Every time I opened the ramp door, in my mind, there was always a face looking up, smiling and taking pleasure in the dread it caused. Every time you opened that ramp to throw your clothes on the floor, it was as if this thing was waiting for you and looking up. When I told this story to my family at Christmas, about 20 years later, my sister's eyes widened and she said, "You felt that too?" My parents didn't want to go into details, but they had the impression that something very bad had happened in the basement. Probably someone being killed or taking their own life. My sister and I pressed them for more information, but they refused and downplayed anything supernatural. After we moved in '86, my parents initially had trouble selling the house. From time to time we would go back to check, sweep the leaves, clean the gutters, etc. The empty house gave an even worse feeling. Every time we left, there was a sense of relief. I know that all of this is circumstantial and probably not paranormal. I say this because I really don't want to believe in things of this kind. Haste is a trap and I fell into it. To cut through, I went onto a dirt road, but the map didn't show properly. The light rain from the previous night had turned into a mud pit. It was inevitable. The truck got stuck. Total darkness. The time it took to smoke a couple of cigarettes, and despair was already setting in. That's when I saw a yellowish light in the distance, in the middle of the bushes. A house. My salvation. I walked in that direction. It was a simple little house, made of blue wood, the paint peeling. The door was only slightly ajar. I knocked. I called. Nothing. I pushed the door. A smell of food on the stove. On the table, 2 plates served, the steam still rising. An old radio crackled a song. Next to the plate was a child's notebook. I opened it to every page and found the same sentence, written in trembling handwriting, repeated dozens of times. It's not him who comes. It's him who orders him to come. A shiver ran down my spine. It was a trap. I left there in a hurry, my heart in my mouth. I don't know how, but I got the truck unstuck and got out of there. The next day at the first gas station, I told the story to the attendant. An old man who was having coffee heard and approached. "Young man, that blue house over there, it burned down about 20 years ago. Killed the whole family, but some nights it reappears with the light on, waiting for visitors. They say whoever goes in never comes back properly." When I went to clean the cabin later, I found a small cross made of still damp twigs under my seat. I threw it out the window. The next morning, in place of the cross, there was a hair clip covered in mud. I don't know who ordered it, but something from that house decided to hitch a ride with me. In 2011, I picked up a truckload of cargo. A colleague, Larcio, had abandoned his loaded truck in a yard. He got sick, they said. I got into the cab. The air was heavy, a smell of dampness, of wet clothes that never dry. And the strangest thing was, the CB radio had been ripped from the dashboard. Only the wires were hanging. I put the truck on the road. It was a silent trip, but I didn't feel alone. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw movement in the passenger seat. The air would get cold, out of nowhere, making my arm shiver. But I looked, and there was no one there. It's sleepiness, shadows, I told myself. I arrived at my destination. The foreman took my invoice, looked at me and laughed. "You're late, partner. This load is already in stock. It arrived 3 days ago." I said that was impossible. He pointed to the signature on the delivery slip. Larcio delivered it. His name is here. My blood ran cold. "No," I said. "Larcio is sick. He abandoned the truck." The man became serious. "My friend, Larcio died in a terrible accident last week. Even before loading this truck, I was devastated. I went home without understanding. A week later, a friend sent me a photo on his cell phone. He had crossed paths with me on the road and took a picture of my truck. And there, in the passenger window, stuck to the glass, was the dark outline of a man. The ghost driver didn't haunt the road. He just wanted to finish the last delivery. My cra on the road was a shadow. Today, I am a retired man, but the road doesn't forget those who owe it, and my debt is high. The first time was at the end of an afternoon, the light already fading on the mountain stretch. I saw the girl. She was maybe 11 years old. A light blue dress, her bare feet on the hot asphalt, a little hand raised, standing like a statue. I drove straight past. Who in their right mind stops in the middle of nowhere? It's all in their head. Tiredness. But on the way back, there she was. Same place, same pose. The peak of dawn, with the low fog. Her silhouette was a blur against the headlights. I pushed on and kept going. This repeated itself for months. High sun, heavy rain. She was there. Until one day curiosity was greater than fear. A crazy idea. I stopped the truck, the engine sputtering, and got out. The silence was total. Where she should have been, there was nothing. Just a pair of small, worn plastic sandals, and a trail in the bushes, as if something heavy had been dragged inside. I got back in the truck with a chill down my spine. That's when the memory hit me like a punch years before. 1993. Same stretch of road. I saw a shadow. Heard a strange noise on the shoulder of the road and continued my journey. Days later, the news on the radio. A girl's body found. At that moment, I understood. The girl in the blue dress wasn't just any ghost. She was my debt. The reckoning for all the times I looked and didn't stop. This happened in 2016. I lived in a remote town with a close-knit community. The surrounding landscape was flat, with a dense forest. So, basically, the only things to do were hiking or camping. Otherwise, you had to drive an hour to the next town, which was a bit bigger. My friend Matt and I used to camp quite a bit, and this time he said a friend of his had recommended a place for us to go. That's where we went. It was only a 15-minute drive from the outskirts of our town. There was no parking, so we simply stopped the car on the side of the road. The trail was very weak and narrow, something that didn't seem to be used often. We walked for about an hour until we reached the campsite. There was supposed to be a beautiful view of a lake, but Matt's friend must have been making fun of us, because it definitely wasn't a lake, nor a beautiful view. It was more like a swamp, a dark pond covered in vegetation. It seemed to have been beautiful a few years ago, but now it definitely wasn't. After laughing at the situation, Matt pointed to a tent on the other side of the water. It was too far away to see details, but it was just a lonely tent among the trees. My eyes drifted to the edge of the water, further down, away from the tent. That's when I noticed a person watching us. They were standing at the edge of the swamp, directly across from where we were. I gave a quick wave, trying to downplay the awkward situation. We both assumed it was the person who was in the tent. Anyway, we set up our tents on a hill away from the water and went on with our day. We played some games and had long conversations. Throughout the day, We occasionally looked at the water and both found it a little strange that we never saw the person near the tent. Either she wasn't there or she was walking among the trees, further away. As day turned to night, several hours passed without us seeing anyone. We walked to gather kindling and lit a fire. Then we sat in our chairs near the flames and prepared dinner. We were talking and laughing when Matt suddenly jumped up from his chair. His eyes were fixed on something right behind me. I stood up and looked. In the darkness was the silhouette of someone standing only about 6 meters away. The person had long hair and wore dark clothes. The shadows obscured them too much for us to tell if it was a man or a woman or if they were holding something. "Hi, Matt," they called. "Is everything all right?" I asked. The person stood still for a moment and then quickly walked away. I looked at Matt, and although we were both scared, we exchanged nervous smiles, as if to say, what the hell was that? Honestly, it has been so long that I do uneven remember what excuse or theory we came up with to explain why that person was there. We assumed it was the same person we saw on the other side of the water, but that's all I remember. Whatever the explanation was, it was enough for us to continue the night without being so terrified. Somehow we even managed to sleep, which, looking back, I have no idea why we did it. I guess we were too young and confident. In the middle of the night, I woke up to Matt quickly unzipping my tent and shaking me to wake me up. He was breathing heavily and had a look of fear in his eyes. When I left the tent, he said he had woken up hearing someone outside, and when he opened it, he saw the same person standing right next to mine, holding something in their hands. When the person realized he was looking, they run away. He was very scared, and I felt I needed to keep the calm. Our only options were to risk walking along the narrow trail in the dark or stay at the campsite. We decided to relight the campfire and stay awake all night, but we left everything ready in case we needed to flee. As soon as the sun rose, we left. That day, after talking about what had happened, we decided to file a police report to warn other people about someone acting bizarrely in that area. We were surprised when we received a call later that day, asking us to go to the police station to answer some questions. It turns out that the tent we saw belonged to a person who had been missing for over a month. They searched the area, but found nothing else. They showed us photos of the missing person. Both Matt and I were sure it wasn't the same person we saw, which is extremely disturbing. I hope that person has nothing to do with the disappearance, but I have my doubts. There are mistakes we make in life that we pay for with money. Others we pay for with a piece of our soul that never returns. Mine was on one of those Saturday afternoons, when we're kids and courage is just another name for idiocy. I grew up hearing the story of the Itatiba farm. Everyone in the region knew it. The story of an entire family, father, mother, and children, who were murdered and thrown into the property's well. A brutality that stained the land. They said the place was cursed, but the house was always empty because nobody could stay there. They said that at night you could hear things, and we, a bunch of 15-year-old kids with nothing better to do, thought it would be a great adventure to go there. To play the brave, we went in the late afternoon in a friend's father's old car. As we drove away from the city and onto the dirt road, the weather changed. The sun went down, painting the sky a sickly orange, and the silence grew thicker. When we arrived at the fallen gate of the property, night was already approaching. The place was chilling. The grass was high, swallowing what was once a garden. The house, with its windows like empty, broken eyes, stared at us. The air was heavy, still, as if holding its breath, and there in the middle of the land was the old stone well, with a heavy wooden lid on top. "I doubt you have the courage to open it," Jonas teased. Always the most talkative. No one wanted to back down. We approached slowly, stepping on dry branches that crackled too loudly in all that silence. Jonas and Beto leaned on the wooden lid. Wita nefor. They dragged it aside. The creaking of the rotten wood was the only thing that could be heard. A smell rose from the hole. A smell of stagnant water, of mud, and of something else. A sweet and bad smell that turned our stomachs. We peeked inside. It was just a bottomless darkness, a darkness that seemed to swallow the light. That's when we heard it, coming from the direction of the house. A child's giggle, thin, quick, and then it disappeared. We froze. We looked at each other, our eyes wide. "It's the wind," Beto stammered. But we knew it wasn't. But what wind is it? I thought to myself, feeling a chill run down my spine. We stood there, our hearts pounding in our throats, just listening to our own breath. And then a small stone was thrown in our direction, coming from the bushes near the house. It hit the ground near Jonas's foot. Nobody moved. There was nobody there. That was enough. The game was over. Real, icy fear took over. "Let's go now," I said, my voice barely audible. Jonas and Beto pushed the lid back into place with a dull thud. As we turned to run towards the car, we heard it again, but this time from inside the well. It wasn't laughter. It was crying. A low, desperate woman's cry. A sob of pure sadness that seemed to come from the depths of the earth. It was a sound that didn't make you angry. It didn't just make you scared. It made you feel a pain in your chest. "What a shitty idea, man," shouted Beto, already running ahead. We jostled to get into the car. Nobody looked back. Jonas started the engine and sped off down that dirt road, raising a cloud of dust, as if he wanted to erase the farm from the map. I was the only idiot who looked in the rearview mirror, and for a second, before the dust covered everything, I swear I saw two small figures, the size of children, standing near the well watching us drive away. To this day, when it rains heavily and that smell of wet earth rises, I remember that well and the crying. Ghosts aren't scary just because they scare you. Sometimes what's most terrifying is the sadness they can't leave behind. When my daughter, Julia, turned 7, she invented an imaginary friend. Normal. Every child has one. His name was Tattoo Armadillo. She talked to him all day. Tattoo said he doesn't like broccoli. Tattoo wants to play hide-and-seek. Tattoo is afraid of the dark. My wife and I found it funny. The problem is that Julia started to get scared, afraid of her own imaginary friend. She stopped wanting to sleep in her room. She said that the armadillo was watching her from the corner of the room, that he whispered things in her ear when the light, it would go out. He didn't like it when she played with other children at school. We tried everything. Psychologists, talking, turning on the hallway light. Nothing worked. One night, we woke up to her screams. We ran to her room. She was sitting on the bed, huddled up, pointing to the closet. "He's in there. He's angry, Daddy. He said that if I tell you again, he'll take me to play underground." My fatherly heart spoke louder than reason. I opened the closet door forcefully, ready to show her that there was nothing there. And there wasn't, just her clothes and toys. That's when I smelled it. A strong smell of damp earth, of mold coming from inside the closet. The next day, Julia drew the armadillo for us. I expected a stick figure, something childish, but what she drew made my stomach churn. It was a small, hunched creature with long, thin arms and nails that looked like claws. It had no face, just 2 black holes in place of eyes. That night, I decided to install a baby monitor with a camera in her room. I wanted to prove to myself that it was just her imagination. I stayed in the living room looking at the grainy image on the small monitor. Julia slept restlessly in the dead of night, when the house was in absolute silence. I heard a sound through the device, a light scratching coming from the closet. I kept my eyes glued to the screen. The closet door opened slowly, creaking, and from the darkness inside, a small, dark thing began to crawl out. It was exactly like the drawing. The creature crawled across the floor, making no noise, and began to climb onto my daughter's bed. I jumped off the sofa, but before I could take a step, the creature leaned over Julia's face. I couldn't hear what she was saying, but I saw her shoulders moving, and then she turned and looked directly at the camera. For me, the image on the monitor flickered and went blank. I ran to her room, bursting through the door. Julia was fast asleep, calmer than she had been in weeks. The room was normal. The closet was closed. The smell of earth was gone. The next morning, Julia woke up smiling. "Daddy, the armadillo's gone," she said happily. "He said he found a new friend. He said he's going to play with you now." My first job was as a gas station attendant on the side of the highway. One of those 24-hour stations that seemed like an island of light in the middle of an ocean of darkness. The night shift was the worst. There was almost no business, and the boredom was only surpassed by sleepiness. To pass the time, I would talk to Mr. Antina, the security guard, a man already bent by time, who had more stories than a book. One moonless night, while we were having reheated coffee. He pointed to the public phone in the corner of the yard. An old, graffiti-covered phone booth. "See that phone over there?" he said, his voice hoarse. "If it rings, don't answer." I laughed. "Why?" "It's the bill collector." He didn't laugh. "Don't joke about that, kid. A few years ago, there was a terrible accident right here in front. A car rolled over. A young woman died instantly. Before she died, they say she crawled to that payphone to try to call her family. She died with her hand on the hook. The story gave me chills, but I still thought it was just old man talk to scare the newbie." The night dragged on. Suantino went to do his rounds in the back, and I was left alone, looking at the empty road. That's when it happened. Ring, ring. The high-pitched sound of the phone cut through the silence of the night. My whole body froze. It was the payphone ringing. I stood there, looking at it, my heart pounding at the speed of an out-of-control engine. It's a prank call. Some idiot passing by on the road. Ring, ring. It wouldn't stop ringing. It was insistent, desperate. Curiosity, that damned curiosity, was stronger than fear. I walked slowly towards it. The sound got louder and louder, more shrill. I stopped in front of it. From the payphone, my hand trembling. To hell with Italiano, I took the receiver off the hook. At first, just static, a loud hiss, like a radio station out of tune. "Hello," I said, my voice faltering. The hiss continued for a moment, and then was replaced by a sound, a damp, bubbling sound, and a voice. A woman's voice choking, struggling to breathe. She wasn't saying words. It was just a lament, a groan of pain mixed with a liquid sound, as if she were drowning. "I can't." My voice choked. I threw the phone back on the hook with all my might and ran back to the convenience store, locking myself inside. When Mr. Antina returned and saw me, white as a sheet, he just shook his head. "You answered, didn't you?" he said without needing an answer. "She just wants someone to know, someone to listen. The problem, Guri, is that after you answer, she knows you're listening and she never stops calling." It all started with the radio. I found it at a flea market. A heavy, dark wooden contraption with a yellowed glass dial. The seller assured me it worked, and it did. At home, after a good cleaning, I turned the knob, and the nostalgic hiss filled the room, followed by an old music station. I thought I'd made a good deal. For the first few nights, everything was normal. I left it on quietly, playing some old MPB, while I read on the sofa. It was cozy. After a while, things got weird. The radio started changing stations on its own. Out of nowhere, the music would be cut off by a hiss, and it would jump to another frequency. At first, they were other normal radio stations. Then it started stopping at empty spots on the dial, where there should only have been static. But it wasn't just static. In the middle of the hissing, I started hearing things. Whispers. Disjointed phrases. "He's watching. Don't turn on the light. Close the door." There were different voices. Men, women, children, all hurried, scared. They seemed like warnings. I turned off the radio, unplugged it, but the feeling of being watched continued. I felt a weight in the air of the apartment. Things changed places. The key I left on the table appeared on the floor. The closet door that I was sure I had closed, I found ajar. The peak was one early morning when insomnia got the better of me. I was lying down, looking at the ceiling, when I heard a noise coming from the living room. It was the radio. It was on. I had unplugged it. I was absolutely sure. I got up slowly, went to the living room on tiptoe. The radio was there, shining in the dark. The cable unplugged from the wall, and no music or static came from it. A conversation came from it. It was the voice of a man and a woman. They seemed to be arguing, but in a strange, repetitive way. "The stain on the carpet won't come out," said the woman, her voice tired. "I know. I've tried everything," replied the man, his voice slurred. "What are we going to tell him?" the woman asked. "We're not saying anything. He can never know what happened that night, on that very couch," the man concluded. The phrase repeated itself, again and again, like a broken record. He can never know what happened that night on that very couch. I was paralyzed with terror, staring at my couch. The same couch where years ago my parents had suffered the domestic accident that killed them. A gas leak, they told me. Slowly, I approached the radio. The man's voice spoke again, but this time the phrase was different and seemed to be speaking directly to me. Turn that off. Boy, you've heard enough. Childhood memories should be sweet, but some have the bitter taste of fear. I lived in Park Cuyaba, a new neighborhood with few houses and a lot of silence. I was almost 7 years old. My second brother, a little over 2, and the third was on the way in my mother's belly. That's when they arrived. The house next door, previously empty, gained a family. There were only 3 people. The names I will use are not theirs, but their faces. Their faces I never forgot. Jorge was a man who looked like he'd stepped out of an old movie. Tall, pot-bellied, with a thick mustache that hid his mouth. Helena, his wife, was the opposite. Also tall, but silent, with sad eyes and long, black hair that looked like a veil. And their son, Raphael, a copy of his father, was only 4 years old, but he was big, a child's body with the seriousness of a man. They quickly became friends with my parents. The neighborhood was like that. Few people, a lot of loneliness. They frequented our house, and that's when the strangeness began to show itself. 3 months after their arrival, I turned 7. There wasn't going to be a party, but my father gave me a beautiful doll, the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. In my innocence, after showing it to my mother, I ran to show it to them. Mrs. Helena smiled, a weak smile, but when I approached Mr. Jorge, his face closed up. A shadow passed over his eyes. "Take that away from me," he said, a low, harsh voice. "Dolls. They have the look of dead people." My 7-year-old smile faded. I went back to my room, hugging my doll, not understanding. And there was the cup rule. He never drank anything from glass cups, only plastic ones. My mother asked him why one day. He answered, without blinking. "At the bottom of the glass, I see their faces, the faces of those who are gone." Their house was an echo, almost without furniture. A stove, a double mattress stretched on the floor, and clothes stored in cardboard boxes, as if they were ready to run away. At any moment, Jorge traveled a lot, and during those days of absence, Helena breathed. She would come to talk to my mother, her voice low and hurried, and it was in one of those conversations that she told us. She said that in the middle of the night, she would hear light knocks on the bedroom window. She would wake Jorge with her heart in her throat, and he would just say with a frightening calm, "You don't need to go. I already know who it is." Until the day the silence broke into screams. Jorge returned from his trip without warning almost at night and didn't find Helena at home. He came straight to ours. The scene that followed is a blur in my memory. I remember him grabbing Helena by the hair. I remember the noise. I remember my mother pushing us into the bedroom. And I remember Jorge showing up at our door, no longer the neighbor, a monster. Helena needed to go to the hospital, and he, with an impassive face, asked if Raphael could spend the night with us. My parents agreed. The next day, he went to pick up Helena, returned in an old pickup truck without license plates, and took her into the house next door. Then he picked up Raphael, and the silence returned. A different silence. Heavy, a tomb-like silence. 2 days passed without seeing Raphael, without hearing a single sound from their house. On the 3rd day, the sun rose, and I went to call him to play. I knocked on the door. No one answered. I peeked through the window, my hand cupped against the dusty, empty glass. The house was empty. The mattress, the boxers, the stove. Everything had vanished, as if they had never existed. They left in the dead of night, without a goodbye, without a single trace. My parents used to say they were always running away from someone or something. Today, I understand. Jorge didn't see the faces of the dead at the bottom of the glass, by chance. He saw them because he knew them. Since my wife died, the apartment has become too big, too quiet. The loneliness at night was a physical, heavy thing. That's why I adopted the dog, a big, black mongrel. that I found on the street. I named him Shadow. He was quiet, but he was company, a warmth at the foot of the bed. He had a strange habit. Every night, at the same time, when the early morning got deeper, he would get up, go to the hallway door, and growl. It wasn't a growl of anger, it was of fear. The fur on the back of his neck would stand on end, and he would growl low, continuously into the empty hallway. I would turn on the light. There was nothing there. "What's wrong? Boy, are you seeing a ghost?" I would joke, but it left me with a nagging feeling, and this repeated itself for weeks. Every single night. I was already getting used to my ritual of waking up, turning on the light, calming the dog, and going back to sleep. One night, things changed. The shadow not only growled, it barked, a desperate, high-pitched bark, and it ran under my bed, trembling like a leaf. I sat up in bed, my heart in my mouth. What the hell had scared it so much? I turned on the bedside lamp. The hallway remained empty. Silence. "Is anyone there?" I asked, my voice a whisper. No answer. That's when I noticed the bathroom door at the end of the hallway. The light was on. I was absolutely sure I had turned it off before going to bed. I'm getting old, forgetful. That's what I tried to tell myself. I got up, the cold floor beneath my feet. I walked slowly down the hallway. The shadow whimpered under the bed. I stopped in front of the bathroom door. I could hear the sound of the shower, the water falling. "Who's there?" Primera sa, it louder, grabbing a heavy shoe to use as a weapon. "It's a thief. It can only be a thief." I pushed the door open with my foot. "How I miss you" was my wife's handwriting.